So we're starting with today's class in Hawaii. My name is Lama Tashi of the Kauai Dharma Center, which is located in Kapa'a on the island of Kauai. And we do these Dharma teachings regularly, covering various topics. Tonight the topic is about a practice called taking and sending with the breath. It's actually a prana yoga practice using what is called bodhicitta, or the clear nature of mind together with the mind itself. And then also we are going to talk about the Bardo of becoming, which is called the Sipai Bardo in Tibetan, which is based on two categories of teaching. When we talk about the Bardo of becoming, we're talking about what happens after we leave the body. And of course, all religious traditions have their own view on that. But Buddhism not being a religion, we're more concerned with having a good, healthy state of consciousness when entering into this, what they call the next life. I don't like to use the word death because it's only the body that quits. So when we talk about the various bardos, actually we are already existing here in 6 bardos. We have the waking stage, which everybody's familiar with. Then at the end of the daily waking stage, we go into the bardo of the sleep stage. And then from that, we progress into the dream state. And that might reoccur 2 or 3 times during the process of the sleep. And the 4th bardo is the bardo of when we start to leave the body. And the 5th bardo is the bardo of actually leaving the body. And the 6th is entering into the bardo of becoming. And that one is the basis for most of the practices of Tibetan Buddhism. Even though it sounds like we're taking care of our situation now, what we are actually doing with these health programs of the Tibetan tradition is preparing for the eventuality of leaving the body and existing in a healthy state in the next life. So we'll talk more about that, but that's the one we're concerned with. And the 2 categories that the Tibetans have dealt with this after leaving the body state is one of the sutra tradition, which a lot of people are familiar with, called the Tibetan Book of the Dead. And that's a view for people at that level of practice. And then there's the tantric view of what occurs as a transition period before your next, what they call rebirth, back into the human condition. There's no set time for that, but it takes place like that. All of this that we're talking about is called cyclic existence, and how we approach this situation is through various techniques and methods of training the mind, which is all humans have, animal spirit, and then connecting to the clarity or the basis of the consciousness in which the mind resides. And everybody has that ability, but very few people use it. And of course, Tibetan Buddhism that's their main product. That's their main reason for practicing Dharma. The word Dharma itself comes from the term manifestations or energy. And in our world, the drama, and the drama is so powerful that it causes this situation of constant change from good to bad and back again. And that's because of the emotionality of mostly of us humans. And that is the situation that we're directly dealing with these healing practices. When we start with the practice of Dharma, we have 4 thoughts that categorize us as Buddhist, or what we call Mahayana tradition Buddhist or Tantric Buddhist, which is a different level of practice from what we call Theravadan or the ordinary Buddhist tradition that pervades the planet. When we move into the Mahayana state of practice, we have these 4 thoughts that are necessary to keep in mind as we perform the various methods and connect more and more to our own innate state of clarity, which we call natural mind or Buddha nature. The first of these 4 thoughts is simply that because you have connected to this extraordinary level of teachings and healing, you should consider yourself so fortunate that you would be inclined to connect more and more to it and do more and more actual practice. And the second thought is since everything is impermanent, including our own body, the situation is good now but could change later, so we take this idea of impermanence to inspire us to practice now, not wait. The third thought is in Buddhist tradition, we follow to karma. The karma is simply that everything you say, think, and do has a result. And most of what we say, think, and do is from an emotional preoccupation with what we are sensing, thinking, and our activities or our tendencies. And that is called karma. So your karma now is because you have done wonderful things in the past, causing you to come to this situation in this life. And you want that extraordinary, wonderful practice so that our karma stays what we call favorable. The fourth thought is that conditioned existence is a state of mind. And it starts with taking a body, and then through the body having sensual perception. And as a result of these 2, taking a form and the sensual perceptions, causes us to think. And the thinking about what we are perceiving, for instance, the body and its perceptions, has a tendency to emotionally involve itself with these processes. And that emotionality basically is on the condition of not knowing, or what we call ignorance. But because of this, conditioned existence is not favorable for all human beings that come into the human condition. So therefore, we should practice to make sure that we move from this unfavorable condition type of existence into the favorable unconditional state of existence. And that's called the practice of the Dharma. So some of the topics that we're going to cover today are very useful for one to increase their capacity in the unconditional nature of their consciousness and decrease their emotional involvement with the conditioned state that we find ourselves in. That said, we start with what is called refuge. And when we take refuge, we think that we're doing this to the benefit of all beings, as if all the sentient beings are our family. So I'm going to start with this refuge prayer. And in formal practice, it's actually said 3 times, both in Canadian, American, or English, or Australian, whichever one you choose, and once in Sanskrit. It goes like this. In order to attain enlightenment for ourselves and limitless sentient beings, our mothers, we now altogether take refuge and offer prostrations. We go for refuge to all the lamas, we go for refuge to all the idams, the deities gathered in the mandalas. We go for refuge to all Buddhas, those who have conquered their mind and gone beyond. We go for refuge to all this supreme Dharma. We go for refuge to all the noble Sangha. We go for refuge to all the Dakas and Dakinis, who are the protectors and defenders of the Dharma. All of these 6 refuges possess the eye of transcending awareness. Ave mama dampa nama chatsu chiyo yedam chokor gilatso nama chatsu chiyo sanjay chom dende nama chatsu chiyo dampe chur nama chatsu chiyo Paupe Gendu Nama Chatsu Chiyo Pawo Kandro Chotu Sume Sho Yeshe Ki Shendong Dempa Nama Chatsu Chiyo. And the second prayer is called the Prayer of Bodhicitta, where we bring altruistic compassion and the connection to insight or our pure state of awareness together. To the Buddha, Dharma, and this Supreme Assembly, we go for refuge until enlightenment. May I, through merit gained from practicing the 6 disciplines of the Bodhisattva, accomplish Buddhahood for the sake of all beings. And in Sanskrit, it's chanted like this. Sanjay Chodam Choki Chodam Lam Jesu Bardo Dagni Chatsu Chi Dagi Jinso Jipe Sonam Ki Drola Penjur Sanjay Drupar Sho. So those 2 prayers are the basis of all the Mahayana and tantric practices of Tibetan Buddhism. The 6 disciplines of the Bodhisattva path are practiced on 2 levels. As I mentioned before, the conditioned or relative level, and also on the ultimate or unconditional level of pure awareness. These 6 disciplines start with generosity, and the second discipline is morality together with ethics, good manners, and practice. The third discipline is patience. The fourth discipline is diligence or perseverance in the practice. The sixth discipline is the introduction of meditation and yoga methods of healing. And the sixth discipline is connecting directly to one's true nature, and through these practices increasing the capacity to more and more use that on the level of compassion and interaction with others, which makes it very practical. So these are the 6 disciplines of the Bodhisattva path that start one to become what is commonly called a Buddha. I like the term mature human being. Now, in practice, we have what we call the established connection to a teacher or lama. The lama is absolutely necessary as the shamanistic healer program. In other words, the Lama has the information of how to use these methods on both the ultimate and relative level of your mind or consciousness. And through this, one can take what is usually pretty heady, a lot of information, and reduce it to a strong connection to the heart. So the heart mind is the key, and it's the heart mind of the Lama that you're connecting with. So yes, there's a lot of knowledge and information that goes with these practices, which we're going to talk about tonight. But the real connection is to one's heart mind, which is based on unconditional love and the extension of what we call altruistic compassion. And through this basis, we come to use these practices to establish ourselves and limitless sentient beings in a mind of bliss or joy. And once that's established, then the emotional transformation becomes not just the end of the path, but an ongoing program because of the way the emotional energy is transformed as healing modalities. And that's ongoing in this life and on into the next life of the Bardo. The Bardo of Becoming, or the Sipai Bardo, which is the discussion topic for tonight, for today, is based on karma. Most humans, you can see by their actions and how they think and speak, don't believe the karma. And even in Buddhism, a lot of the tradition, they don't understand karma. The idea here is that everything you do, everything you think, everything you say should be of benefit, not just to yourself, but to every living being you come in connection with or think about. And also to your environment. Now, just those words, being of benefit to oneself, others, and the environment, if that was a universal way of being on this planet, you know everything would be a lot better. So this is a very important aspect of consideration when entering the next life. So how do we transform this life so that the next life will be beneficial? And so what we do is we access how we think. And we do that, train the mind in the thinking process, because it affects what we say and what we do. It's the boss. Now, a lot of people approach this training in reverse. For instance, a good example of this would be Hatha Yoga. Hatha Yoga is very good for training or disciplining the body, but not so good for training the mind or the speech of the individual. So yes, your body becomes more healthy. You do come in contact with states of peace or stillness, which is useful, but you still have the emotional program causing problems. So what we want to do is train the mind by what is called introspection. The common term is mindfulness. But we want to look directly at our own thinking process, how we think about what we're senses, actually look at the central perceptions themselves, but most importantly, analyze the emotional preoccupation with what we're sensing and thinking. And you will find that most of what you are connecting to is not in the present situation. For instance, you find more and more that you're preoccupied with a lot of past experience. And that's not the present. That's gone. That arose, presented itself, and disappeared either as an experience or as a thought emotionally involved with the experience. Then the mind also has this tendency to project to the future. And thinking about that is a great distraction to the present situation because it hasn't occurred yet. Yet we come up with all kinds of ideas, just like we're talking now about the Bardo of becoming. This hasn't occurred yet. That doesn't mean the situation won't exist in the future. It's just that we don't want to fixate on the future. So by staying in the present through analytical, we say, introspection or mindfulness, we start to locate what is harmful to ourselves, others, and our environment. And when I mean harmful that causes pain or suffering or dis-ease. 2 words, dis-ease. And we want to transform that more and more, not just take it out, but transform that into more and more positive, healthy, less abusive, less harmful thinking. Just the thinking. And so we work with this aspect of our consciousness called the mind on 2 levels in Mahayana Buddhism. The first level, as I mentioned before, is the relative, how we already are with ourselves, everybody, and the environment. Individually and collectively. Individually and collectively simply means as we are as a human family. And then we start to locate through the thought process that these thoughts are all emotionally predispositioned. In other words, a lot of what we're thinking, we already have decided we like it, we don't like it, or we don't have any interest in it. Well, that third category of disinterest, we're now applying as a human race to each other and to our environment. That's not workable. The attachment, of course, is based on what we like or what we desire. The aversion is what we think about that we don't like, either in our thoughts or our experiences or our relationships. Those 2 categories are based on ignorance. So when we talk about ignorance, we're talking about the idea of an I existing separately from whatever it's sensing and thinking about. And that is the basis of all the pain and suffering experienced in the human condition. Because in reality, both the relative and ultimate realities, there is no such thing as separation. You cannot have a duality of a subject and object existing separately. It doesn't work that way. And because of this interconnection of everything that we're sensing and thinking about, the activity itself cannot be separate. And on this scale, we're all the same. So when we decide that our future or the next life we want to have as favorable as this life, then we start to root out this idea of separation. And that's where the two bases of Mahayana Buddhism come into the practice of unconditional love, which is replacing conditional love, and altruistic compassion, which is replacing what is called worldly compassion. Now, when I talk about karma on this level, it's useful to understand that each of these emotional states have a future effect. And that means, yes, they exist now, but because of their power, they are going to have an effect in our future. And we don't know when. It could be an immediate effect, or it could take a long time for it to come to fruition. But this karma, for instance, if you have the nature of desire, and that's a predominant drive in your existence, it's based on attachment, but it escalates. And you can see where it goes in our culture. It goes to a state of extreme attachment called greed. And this is an overpowering emotional tendency. And once it takes hold in the mind, it's very hard to transform. And also, if one dies in that state of mind of unfulfillment, the cause is a spiritual kind of rebirth where that would determine your existence, your next existence. So that's just one tendency, attachment. Take extreme to show you how in the Bardo of becoming, it could be unfavorable. Another category is we get what we want, but we're never fulfilled. In other words, we get what we want, but we get it to such a state that we become arrogant about it. For instance, this is what we call a religious tendency. And the religious tendency is based on the idea of superiority or being better in some way than others, either physically, mentally, or spiritually. And that, if a person has that very strongly ingrained in their existence, this life, then next life, that could cause rebirth in what is called the celestial situation. Now that's actually what most religions are based on, and even some forms of Buddhism. Another category of emotionality is called feeling less than or inferior. And this is a state of consciousness where jealousy, envy, coveting tendencies arise. If one is extreme in this category, then that overpowering emotional tendency causes one to be born in what they call the realm of the demigods and goddesses, or war gods and gods. Now, I'm not going into the into the definition of each of these spirit state. Just to define the emotional aspect is what the Buddha main purpose for taking birth. And we have one more state in the spirit world that is so extreme and so hard to compensate for that it is the basis of most of the cultures of the planet. And it is called abuse, or in a category, aversion. And this state of aversion, which causes this abusive nature to arise, is because of the power of that one tendency to again escalate into anger. And it doesn't stop there, it goes into rage or hatred. If one was to lose their body while in this state of consciousness, their next rebirth would be what is called extremely unfavorable, or hell. And you can see the damage that it is causing the human race today. The extent of that is 1,000 times worse in the next life. So we have these emotional states represented through attachment, aversion, pride, jealousy, greed, and anger. And the reason that we do this is because in each one of those categories are thousands of other disturbing or unfavorable states of being or consciousness. Now, that describes the Bardo of becoming. But it doesn't stop there. Whether or not you believe in rebirth or reincarnation has nothing to do with what I'm talking about. This discussion on the Bardo is based on emotionality, or the drama field that we find ourselves in today, the human existence. And you can see that if you have good karma, you can get a human birth. That in itself is most precious, because only a human can develop into a mature being called a bodhisattva or a Buddha. But if you look at the state of 7 billion humans on this planet today, you will find that most of the existence is very unfavorable. And that is due to the negative karma of one's body, speech, and mind. This life, past life. And then we have one more state of existence which we coexist with, and that's called the animal world. And in this state, the consciousness is not as developed as in the human condition. It's determined by a state of ignorance. And this causes the animal to act as an animal. And you can see that in the animal realm, it's not all nice. But the ignorance is one of the categories applied to the animal state. Now, of course, animals that are domestically involved with humans can evolve to a little higher state of consciousness, but cannot become fully conscious of their own state of being, and they cannot change their animal state. For instance, ocean beings can't become land beings, cats can't become dogs, and so forth. Now, these 6 categories are the basis of the teachings of the Buddha on karma, and it is called the Karma Sutra. And it has each of these categories. Humans only have 2 categories: ordinary and extraordinary. An extraordinary human being is one who's connected to its pure nature of consciousness as it exists in the heart. And based on that, a spontaneously arising knowledge takes place where that human can never again become emotionally involved with anything they experience, anything they think about, or anything that they do. And that extraordinary situation is prevalent within thousands of men and women on the planet today. The other condition of the human being, called ordinary or normal, is most of the 7 billion humans existing on the planet today. If you take the animal category, there are 18,000 categories of animals. And they're uncountable. They're infinite in number, in your body, in the ocean, and on the land. If you take the spirit world, it's also infinite in capacity because the spirit world, inhabits everything in the entire universe. There isn't anywhere in space or any dimension that you can think of where there are no spirits. And this is the Bardo of becoming. And when you move from this state of, I guess you could call it dimension of everything being substantial, at least we think it's substantial, which is an error, and move into the state of less substantial or insubstantial, which is called the Bardo of becoming, or the spirit world. It's a different program. There isn't a sunset and sunrise there. There isn't a time dimension. It is temporal, but not in the same way this human animal existence is. And so the thinking and the emotional tendencies of the human being that arose or evolved during this period of life follow one into that state. And if we say ordinary beings, they, within 4 days after leaving this life will emotionally recreate their next state of being. That's the karma. And this is one of the reasons that we very strongly stress taking refuge, generating bodhicitta, or practicing at least the 6 disciplines of this path, is so that when you do enter that state, it's not with the ordinary or normal tendencies of the human condition as it is today. And that is desirable, that is practical, and we use the word that is healthy. But the most or best aspect of this is it's totally beneficial to beings already in that state. It is totally beneficial to beings, animals and humans in this state of existence. It doesn't mean it's superior. It doesn't mean it's the only way of being. It just means that it is healthy. And so we design various aspects of these practices of mind training and the use of the speech in powerful ways, and that our activity is always about others, being a benefit to others. These states of consciousness that we are generating is to transform directly all of the thousands of negative emotional tendencies to states of healing, but better yet, to occasions for spiritual progress. And what is the spiritual progress of the human condition is to become mature. And actually, that is what you want to enter the bardo of becoming. Without being arrogant, without being jealous, without being full of desire and lust, craving, without being greedy, without being stupid or ignorant, and without being abusive or psychotic. So we start today with a practice called taking and sending with the breath. It's actually a high level of mind training on the path of the Bodhisattva. But it takes the prayer of bodhicitta, which was the second prayer that we use as refuge, to combine compassion with the state of clarity or light. And since the essence of everything is light, and this light pervades boundless space and our consciousness, this practice of Tonglen is the way to go. And I'm using a phrase from a book one of my teachers, Tai Situ Rinpoche, wrote in the 70s, called Way to Go. And what he meant by that was the way to leave this life and move into your next life. The way to leave this human condition and move into the less substantial condition of the next life. And so the way to go starts with prana yoga. In fact, in meditation, we recommend that using the breath is the basis of this, all of the meditation practices, designed quickly to bring one to maturity. So you sit with your back straight, formally, in a chair or on a cushion, eyes slightly open to the space in front to start with, head slightly tilted forward. If you can breathe through your nose, the mouth closed, tongue resting against the palate. Hands in a comfortable position, either on your knees or in your lap. And simply bring your focus to the spontaneous activity of breathing. Simply watch the air come in, everything expand, lungs, diaphragm, everything. And watch the air leave, everything contracting. And the air moving back into the space it came from. Of all the mind training methods, this one is the simplest, most direct, and powerful as to generating positive energy in the body and in the heart. Inhale, exhale. And as you spend a little time with this practice, the tensions of worldly activity dissipate. Disconnecting by focusing causes a state of calm or peace or stillness to arise. And the energy of having the eyes open and breathing through the nose while focusing mentally on the breathing process greatly increases the energy absorption through your physical body and directly into your heart chakra, the energy center located in your chest. It gets you out of your head. Through practice, you are able to hold the focus in this prana yoga technique for longer and longer periods. Sometimes by simply focusing, sometimes by counting, and other methods. Tonight we're going to introduce a method called, in the Tibetan Sanskrit, Tonglen. Tong means clarity or natural, pure nature of consciousness. Len means to share. We apply this practice out of kindness and concern for others in a very nice way. To give you an example, right now in your relationships, each of us have some friend, relative, or maybe even an enemy who is in an extreme state of pain and suffering. It could be physical, it could be mental, it could be emotional, it could be spiritual, or it could be a combination of those. In your mind's eye, visualize that friend, lover, relative, adversary. And with your concern for the well-being, whatever dysfunction or painful state that being, that human has, you breathe it in as black light. You take it away from them with your inhale and disappear it into your heart center, this place of kindness and concern for others. Using your imagination, you disappear it there, gone. Immediately with your exhale, light goes back to that person and you think or visualize them totally free of whatever painful discomfort or disease they were occupied with. Gone. And this is why we call it taking and sending with the breath. Or in some cases, sending and taking with the breath. You cannot think of anything else when you are doing Tonglen. The kindness and compassion or concern is overpowering. As if that individual was your own child. Then move your focus to another person you have relations with, or some form of emotional unstable involvement. Knowing their pain and suffering, remove it with your inhale as black light directly into your heart center, disappearing. Immediately exhale clear light to that individual, but most importantly, see them as totally clear of any type of pain or suffering, totally healthy on all levels. Another way of working this one-on-one is if you're having a very favorable state of existence or a very good day, you exhale that to one of your friends, lovers, another human being who is not so fortunate. You see that pervade their stream of being, immediately causing all the negative aspects or disease to come back into you with black light into your heart center and disappear. This is the power of one's mind. This is the power of what you imagine or think, connected with the heart of kindness and concern for others. It does not have to be limited in the present time. It could be of someone that is passed on. It doesn't have to be a human. It could be an animal. And for some of us that are more shamanistic, it could even be applied to the spirit. But the key is the taking and sending with the breath from the heart, not the head. Not hoping, not wishing, not attaching to the practice or its results. Just doing it. Another application of this practice of Tonglen is to apply it to groups of humans. This one is easy. All you have to do is watch the news, read the newspaper. And so we have these groups of humans that are involved in drama, very intense, unhealthy dramas. And you focus on them with your heart, connecting with the breath, by taking in all of that as black light into your heart center and immediately sending white light with your exhale, and visualize that total situation healed. All the victims, all the perpetrators, even the environment healed. And this is why it's so important to be able to focus in yoga and meditation. So that through your mental process, you become more and more mature. In the same way as a mother is for her children. Take all the negative in as black light. Imagine it all healed with clear light of awareness to whatever situation you want to apply this to whatever relationship you have. But remember, the basis is kindness and concern for others. Then at the end of your Tonglen session, move back into a state of relaxed awareness without any fixation mentally. Do not attach to what arises in thoughts. Simply stay in the present, alert and connected to your own completely pure state of awareness. No past, no future, no judgment, just watch. And with this practice applied in many relationships and to many individuals and beings on this planet, you slowly connect more and more to the heart of unconditional love and the application of altruistic compassion as the qualities of your true, pure consciousness. When all of the emotionality subsides and your attachment to the drama field disappears, three qualities develop. And they're located in the heart of loving kindness. Because of the absence of drama, bliss or joy arises. Because of the lack of emotional involvement with what you think, clarity arises. And because you're increasing your capacity of awareness of the instant present, voidness arises. The experience and realization of these three qualities gives one inspiration to more and more invade our worldly activities, everything we do, as occasions for spiritual progress. And at this point in this session today, we can take a break. Maybe some of the people viewing have questions.
Does anybody have any questions? You can type them into the chat box. Doesn't look like there's any questions coming in at the moment.
Okay, I have one for you, Lama Tasha. Can you hear me?
Sure. Yes,
Okay.
go ahead.
So, could you describe for everybody the actual process of going through the bardos from the moment of death to clear light all the way through to the incarnation, and how we tend to grasp to form because of our attachment to form?
Yes.
Please.
The fixation process is a tendency. For instance, if you eat something delightful, you tend to fixate on that type of food. If you see things delightful, you tend to fixate on the object of that delight. If you hear pleasant sounds and so forth, you tend to fixate on that vibratory energy, whatever its source. If you have good smells, you tend to fixate on those odors. And if you have pleasant sensual perceptions through the body, you tend to fixate on these sensual perceptions. This is called attachment. And this simple attachment is the hardest of all of the drama fields to finally be transformed. As we move through life, these fixations, tendencies increase. Without training, without connecting to a spiritual source or teacher, they carry on through the dying process where the body starts to shut down, whether it be right away or over a long period. As the elements themselves determine when you die, and I'm talking about the 5 elements. And this is the karmic preoccupation of these so-called tendencies or fixations, habits. But when they start to occur, they're easy to recognize, especially if you've trained in the Tara or the elemental practices. And they occur the same for everybody, ordinary or extraordinary individual. And how it goes is the earth element dissolves into the water element, it dissolves into the fire element, which we call radiation, it dissolves into the air element. The air element dissolves into the space element, which merges with the consciousness and leaves the body. At the moment of leaving the body, because of the nature of space and the consciousness connecting to that element, there is no mental activity. And this state of no mental activity, which means no perceptions, no emotional involvement, none of that, lasts for about 30 minutes. Or they say the time to eat a good meal. So it could, longer or shorter, doesn't matter. Then, at the end of that, the consciousness moves into a state similar to sleep. This state, depending on the karma of the individual, can last about 3 or 4 days. At the end of that period, the person awakens into the new situation of the Bardo of becoming, which simply is a continuum of your consciousness of the mind. And if you have not trained in the capacity of clarity, which we call awareness, that fixation of the mind is taken over by the emotional tendency or karma of that individual to produce the type of rebirth that that being will experience. And there will be no time. You can't say it's for 1 second or 1 trillion years. There's no time sequential. It's not temporal like this existence, but yet it does exist, but without that orientation. And also there's very little reference points, and because of the less substantial state, it's all mental. And since the mental is preoccupied or has these fixations emotionally with whatever's going on, they can do things in that state that they can't do in this state. But it isn't about the drama of that state. It's about the sameness of the totality of that state of existence can be perceived by all of those beings in that state. For instance, the demigods can see into the celestial realms. The celestial realms can see into the hell realms. The hell realms can see into the frustrated spirit realms. The spirits, all of those, can see into this world, the animal and human condition. All of that becomes apparent. Where for us now it's not. And some of us it is, but most humans not. And that is called cyclic existence, and it never changes unless the person decides to take on its own mind, its own fixations, and deal with them directly and skillfully with the guidance of another being that knows the methods. Not just the karma, not just the tendencies, not just the emotionality, but the methods to directly, like the Tonglen practice, to start this transformation away from the unfavorableness of existence in the conditioned mind situation in the drama field. And so that brings us to another way of expressing the Bardo of becoming. If a human does locate their pure state of awareness and starts to increase the capacity in their mind to more and more connect to that state of being, which is a dimension of being, Then when they go into the Bardo at the moment of death, it's an entirely different scenario. They don't lose awareness. They don't lose the connection of that state of clarity when they move into the first state of becoming, which was the moment of what I said was no mental activity, no recognition. They totally recognize that as a state of orgasmic bliss and enjoy it. Then move on from that state into the heart state of immediately becoming benefit to all those beings in those 6 states of existence to lessen in any way possible their pain and suffering. And so the basis for the ordinary being is one way, and the basis for an extraordinary or mature being is another way. They are not separate. They can never be separate. There is no such thing as separation. So in this so-called clarity or awareness state, you have at your disposal infinite potential of methods. And that is what we call natural mind or Buddha nature. And so those are the only 2 ways we can be in this 3rd dimensional situation. And it's a matter of karma, spiritual development, and so forth, connecting to a teacher who knows. That doesn't mean supernatural. It just means a person who knows, man or woman, we're all equal, no high, no low. We just flatline everything into a state of one state. And so then at that point, the refuge can be fulfilled that all sentient beings in your mind are in a state of bliss, whether they like it or not. And you have to laugh, because that's funny. Does that answer your question? It's the only game in town that we know.
I have a question regarding all that. Where does that information come from? How do they know that that is the process?
Well, it was put to me this way by Kala Rinpoche, who was my root lama, the first shamanistic lama that I connected with to 1977. And I asked him that. I says, where does this information originate? He says, it originates in the natural state of clarity inherent in every living being, spirit, animal, and human. And he said, at this time, in this part of our galaxy, there are 13 worldly planets that this information is being disseminated on through the Dharma. But he said, that's in the present. There is no beginning to this process. Everybody likes to have a beginning, middle, and end to our drama stories. But in this world of phenomenal existence, there is no beginning, middle, or end. There is only constant change. And you can experience timelessness. If you can experience timelessness, in that state, time does not exist. That's it. It is at the same time conditional and unconditional. It is at the same time lucid and ignorant. It is at the same time good and bad. It is at the same time outside and inside. And when you experience this state of joy called timelessness, the drama field disappears entirely. And that's the simplest application of Tonglen, taking and sending with the breath, if you're lucky enough to have a breath. Emaho.
Oh.
Now, in your Tara text, or in the Tara text that we use for training here in the women's retreat, there is a Bardo prayer for becoming. It's called the Bardo Prayer Preparing for Death. But what it says is that, first of all, you take refuge in the three jewels and the three roots of shamanistic Lamaism: the Buddha, Dharma, Sangha, Lama, deity, and protector. You know that this precious human life is very difficult to find and easily destroyed, so you use it purposely with the guidance of the Lama. When confused states of mind arise and non-virtuous action tendencies manifest, do not cherish this body, and at the same time, do not let the mind deceive my pure nature. May I remember that at the moment of leaving the body, I should be happy and confident that with the advice of my spiritual friends, I can move into the Bardo of becoming and be a beneficial and mature being. It doesn't say human being, just being. May I recognize that all the delusions of the five elements of the aggregate of form are actually a process for spiritual development. That leaving the body at that moment is the time to join with the clear nature of awareness, and then take that as a state or reference of how to be in the Bardo of becoming until you meet with your next parent in a future rebirth. Then this whole prayer describes the Bardo, which we already talked about, but at the end it has affirmations. And these affirmations go like this. Since my connection to Tara as a goddess of inspiration, my own pure nature, may I from this state manifest the three bodies of a Buddha, the one of all pervasiveness, the one of teaching through light and energy, and that of merging those two in the human condition as a man or woman. And through the practices of ascetic conduct, discipline, ethics, concentration, insight, and the culmination of the past generation and completion stage used in tantric practice, may I constantly apply the five forces. May I transform all fixations into the force of the two bodhicittas by always keeping them in mind. The two bodhicittas are altruistic compassion and connection to voidness or clarity. The second is the power of the familiarization of maintaining mindfulness and awareness on keeping these two in mind in the drama field. And then the third one is because of these two, the virtuous seeds and activities of all my faculties are concentrated on being of virtue and benefit to all others. The fourth force or power is repudiating any negative thoughts, especially the one of cherishing the self, which in reality does not exist. And the force power of these aspirations is always dedicate all of what one does to the benefit of others in every way possible, and there are infinite applications. Then at the moment of death, because of my virtuous activity, mind training, and connection to my spiritual friend, my Lama Guru, and teachers, I will at that point give away everything without a trace of attachment to anything. I make the aspiration to do this and also make enlightenment, the connection to clarity, the single force of this aspiration. I totally repudiate the idea of a self being separate because it is the cause of suffering, because nothing dies. So I destroy ego clinging. And number 4, I familiarize myself through mind training so that spontaneously I bring clearly to mind the 2 bodhicittas of clarity and compassion. And the 5th one to bring into the leaving the body is I will never be without these 2 bodhicittas in my future existence. Om Tara Tutari Ture Soha. 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 Then we dedicate, if there are no more questions, we'll do the dedication of the merit of this class today, this virtuous activity which we accomplished together. There is no separation between the virtual Lama and those hearing these teachings. Is that appropriate, the dedication now?
I believe so. Let's just see if there's any questions. Does anyone have a question before we end our session this evening? Looks like Jacques.
No, there's no questions there. I've looked at the list, so we can go ahead and dedicate to merit.
All right,
Also,
sounds good.
Available anytime for phone calls, Skype, individually or collectively for groups. And if you ever come to Kauai, we have weekly classes at our Dharma Center Monday and Thursday night, open to everybody. And we do monthly practices at the stupa, which we have here on Kauai. So this is an invite to all that we make connections not only virtually through the web, but also in person. Ewa di nirdu da, chagya champo dru pirne, trowa chinking malupa, dei sala gopar sho, sanjay kusum nimpai jim la dong, choni negur dimpai jim la dong, gendu miche dimpai jim la ki, jitar goma momam dru par sho. By this virtue, having realized Mahamudra, may I quickly establish all beings without exception in this state. By the blessings of the 3 vehicles of the Buddha being established, by the blessing of the unchanging truth of the Dharma, and by the blessings of all the wishes of us, the Sangha, may these and all dedication prayers, aspiration prayers, and long life, good health, and happiness prayers for our lamas be accomplished. Ruchiche, that means thank you, mahalo in Hawaiian.
Duchiche Lama. Thank you.
Thank you, Lama
Very good.
Tashi.
Let me know when
Thank
you're ready to do another one.
Yes, we're gonna look at some dates for November, and we're probably gonna change the time because we've got daylight savings time here. So in order to accommodate you, Lama Tashi, I'll connect with Abby. I think to keep it the same time for you, it might be an hour later for us, and it sounds like that might work better for some people coming home from work in the evening as well. So, so stay posted, everybody. We will be having classes in November and December, and then we're looking to launch some new ongoing classes in 2016. And want to encourage everyone to donate if you feel inspired to Lama Tashi at Kauai Dharma Center to support him and his teaching and his instruction. And the page will come up after the webinar ends, and just yeah, to support our wonderful Lama on Kauai and all his wonderful teaching
And
that he
our
gives
wonderful
us.
teachers, Davy and Jock,
Thank you. Thank you.
located on the Madland.
Right on. Well, thank you, everyone. Love you, Lama Tashi. Love you, Abby. Thank you so much.
Aloha.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye.